Hello and welcome to the Inspire online book group. My name's Ian. It's a rather select group this weekend because of a few IT problems when it should have happened last week. Nevertheless, we're going ahead and we're discussing Songbirds by Christy Lefteri, probably better known for The Beekeeper of Aleppo. And she seems to have a talent for looking at problems of migration and of the sort of difficulties of people who are uprooted. Songbirds is very much in that genre. It's set on the island of Cyprus, and it features Petra, who is the sort of main narrator, really. And she sort of is an optician who runs a very successful optician's practice. And she has a daughter called Ketty. And she's no longer married, she's single. And so she's let part of her house to a local guy called Yanis, who has got a bit of a checkered past, she's also engaged a sort of nanny who is an immigrant or a migrant even, who's from Sri Lanka, called Nisha, to help care with Aliki because she's working a lot. So they're the sort of main characters of the story. It's about really Nisha, who mysteriously goes missing. So it's a bit of a sort of disappearance mystery, and the sort of plot unfolds, told alternately by Petra and Yanis. Yanis, who was quite successful in the economic boom before the bust and was a banker, is now a bit on his uppers and is having to resort to trapping songbirds to make a decent living, which sort of does cast him in a bad light, but I don't think he's really a baddie as such. So those are the main characters. So Chris, what did you think about the book? Did you enjoy it, and did it work for you?
I did, yeah. I really enjoyed it actually, and it did work for me. I mean, it was kind of depressing actually, but actually, I think the book had to be depressing, and it was quite shocking, the bits I found dealing with the hunting, the song, the songbird hunting or whatever the birds were, that was quite a grim read at times, because they're catching tens of thousands of birds, and then that wasn't necessarily the shocking bit. It was when you're getting the descriptions of kind of gutting the biting the birds and peeling. It was quite a depressing read. But as you say, actually Yanis, I quite liked Yanis.
Yeah.
Even though, as you say, kind of not doing an awful thing really, I quite like Yanis. But yeah, it really did work, and I think it's one of those books that kind of highlighted things I didn't really know about, the kind of domestic servant kind of thing in Cyprus, and I found that quite kind of shocking stroke surprising. So that was quite kind of quite highlighting. I found that quite uncomfortable at times. You think, God, I've been to Cyprus. It's part of that kind of feel. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It moved along at a good pace. The central mystery about what happened to Nisha, I don't suppose it was a mystery. I think kind of reasonably clear what happened to Nisha very early on. And I mean, I really enjoyed it.
Yes, and I think it was quite clever, if a little heavy-handed, the sort of analogy of the songbirds being trapped and coming to a gory end, and the migrant workers being trapped. And it was interesting how badly they fared, because they'd had to get into so much debt to actually get away from their home country, that they were sort of working to pay off the debt rather than to actually manage to amass much money to send home. And obviously Nisha has a daughter, she's a single parent as well, back in Sri Lanka, desperately trying to raise cash to send back to Kumari, her daughter. And I thought it was really touching the way Kumari was having these conversations over probably Zoom, and on Yanis's tablet. What did you think about the relationship between Yanis and Nisha, did you sort of find that convincing? And you know, do you think that would have been able to happen just within the confines of a small house without Petra even knowing about it?
I don't know. I mean, it was a hard one, wasn't it? Really, because I kind of feel I don't think necessarily it was a long-term relationship that would have worked in the real world, you know, because I think Yanis was a man who was desperate to get out of what he was doing. You know, he got into, you know, I guess it's kind of the same as like almost the drug, you know, it's almost the drug world of Cyprus, wasn't it? You know, kind of the hunting. So I think he got into something. He was quite desperate to get out of it. And Nisha was this kind of shining light of kind of excitement, or you know, or normality, or she almost seemed like his escape route.
Yeah.
You know, for Nisha was Yanis this kind of opportunity to forget about her rather awful life, really. You know, I mean, she'd had to leave her daughter, her mother, her homeland behind. You know, she wasn't particularly, although I don't think she was badly treated, especially compared to other people's experiences. It was still kind of, she was treated as, you know, certainly it does appear that Petra wasn't just treating us just someone who was there, you know, someone to do her bidding. Didn't necessarily treat her out, especially, you know, she wasn't beating her or anything, but she didn't treat her with particularly a huge amount of respect. You know, on your day off, you go into your room and you rest. Wait, you know, you can't. Kind of quite awful, really.
Yeah.
So I mean, for her, maybe that was a bit of excitement, or a bit of, you know, trying to.
I think it was love. I think she fell in love with Yanis, and probably against her better judgment, because she was taking a huge risk, because she clearly, Petra would have fired her if she found out about that, even though Petra depended very much on her and she was a really good nanny, and Katie had a great relationship with her, but just didn't quite convince me that, given what was at stake, and the fact that her family, her mother and her daughter at home, were really totally dependent on what she could afford to send back, didn't quite work that she would be willing to risk that for romance. You know, I felt that she'd come to Cyprus with a mission, and it was to earn enough money to keep her family going, and perhaps eventually go back with a nest egg for them. And I just didn't feel that was something she would risk. You know, she would be head down and grafting, I felt. But anyway, get that aside, obviously it was quite important for the story that Yanis was desperate to find her, because Petra obviously was put out by her disappearance, but perhaps didn't have the desperate need to find her. Did you think there was any sort of scope for Petra and Yanis to become sort of romantically involved after? Did you feel the story projecting and something happening between Petra and Yanis?
It's interesting you say that, because it's one of those things I kind of thought, if this had made into a movie, that's the kind of way I could have seen it going. But I don't know, because there wasn't a lot of actually, although they were in scene, although they were always together in the book, or you know, from about halfway through when they started going to see Tony and really started searching for Nisha. They were almost every chapter was those two people, from a different point of view. They didn't really speak to each other in a way. You know, it was kind of quite they did this, but it was kind of two lonely people. So I can see where you're coming back, you know, saying there might have been a.
Well, I got the impression from what Nisha had said that Yanis was, you know, a bit gorgeous, and so you just wonder what might have happened between Petra and Yanis. I was caught myself thinking, I wonder if these two are going to get together, but there was no sign at the end, was there? And did you feel the ending was a bit of an anticlimax, really? It kind of fizzled out a bit, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it did a bit. I mean, it was just kind of, this has happened.
She's dead.
She's dead. Hooray! Not hooray, but it was kind of that, wasn't it? And like he's going to go off to Sri Lanka for take someone to say hello, and Petra's now a slightly better mother. Was kind of the ending. Was kind of the ending. It
just felt it kind of fizzled out a bit, and in a way, I would have quite liked it if Yanis and Petra had got together. It would have kind of rounded things off, and it was just like, okay, so he's stopped catching his songbirds now. Is he going to carry on living there when he comes back from Sri Lanka, or is he going to stay in Sri Lanka? And it didn't really get rounded off, I felt. It just sort of finished.
It just fizzled, didn't it? Yeah, there wasn't really, because as you say, it was kind of obvious, unfortunately, that what happened to Nisha. That was kind of, I think, I'd have been more surprised. I'd have been quite surprised if they'd have found her. I'd actually been more surprised if that had happened. So, it was a character kind of story, wasn't it, really? And there wasn't, as you say, there wasn't huge kind of. I didn't feel satisfied by the ending. But although, if you read did you read the bit at the end, the kind of the author interview section?
Can't remember, to be honest.
Where they found out it was effectively a true story. True event.
It had happened. The disappearing migrants. And
that was. I mean, so it would have been nice to know. Did anything happen? Is it just carry on? It did sound like just carry on as usual, didn't it? Unfortunately, there was kind of
and there was the sort of the other bit of Cyprus history, the partition. It was kind of mentioned, but it didn't really sort of feature in the story, and I felt they could have made a bit more of that as well. She could have made a bit more of that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and there were some bits that didn't quite go down. There was the bad. They sort of touched on the bad treatment of domestic workers, but we never quite saw it. We had that sort of comic book lady, almost comic book lady. She was almost a comic. You can see her in a film. It's like, we didn't really see anything truly grim there.
No,
we were introduced to it via Tony, but again, we didn't really see that kind of side of things. So there were a few things that were untouched, I think, that could have brought a bit more kind of.
Yes, I felt that. What about this mysterious character or narrator that goes on about the dead hair? In my version, there was an illustration of a feather. These very short chapters. And it was just, sort of a break in the narration by the two main characters, and there'd be like 3 pages about this dead hair rotting and things crawling in its eye sockets and stuff, and I just didn't know what that was all about.
Yeah, they were like I was going to say that, because actually, I mean, I don't know about you, I gave up reading them because
I read them, but I thought, here we go, the dead hair again, and I don't know what it was supposed to be symbolizing. I think it was a symbolic thing about nature being destroyed or something, but I couldn't get it.
It just annoyed me, actually. Every time you got to, you're like, it's sort of 3 or 4 pages of this, and it actually disrupted the flow of the book for me. It's kind of, I mean, and quite a few authors do it, don't they? They kind of put these kind of chapter breaks in. And I mean, I'm sure someone likes them, or I don't know if they've got to just fill so many pages out in a book, and they think, I've got 50 pages I've got to make up during this book. I'll whack some bits and bobs in. But it just kind of, it didn't play a role.
I just felt there's some significance to this, and it's probably about all the songbirds being caught and destroyed, but I couldn't grasp it. It didn't signify for me.
No, I mean, I've got to say, after the first 2 or 3 of them, in my mind, I kind of decided if this is just rubbish, or I didn't. And I think from then on, I stopped paying much attention to it. So I may have missed something there, but I think because it just kind of lost any flow for the book, it's like, here's a thing that I don't know what it is, and it's going to take, I don't know, 5 minutes of my time. But by the time I've read that, I've forgotten what's going on. And then you got to look back and see what's happening.
Well, it's interesting. I'm glad you felt the same way, because I thought, oh God, I'm really missing something with this this particular bit of narration. It's obviously very significant, but it's going way over my head. So I'm quite glad you felt the same about that.
No, I just really didn't get it at all. And, you know, part of you sort of thinks, why aren't I getting it? But then again, I don't know if it was just...
I think it's something to do with nature, something to do with the sort of power of nature, because it was quite good about the, I mean, you've been to Cyprus, you've been up the Troodos Mountains, I should imagine, and you've, or not up them, but driven through them.
Yeah.
And it's stunning, and, you know, it's a beautiful island, and I don't know, maybe there's something about nature, but it didn't work for me either. So
no, it was funny, but I say that was one of the few bits of the book I didn't like, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, I really didn't like that. So.
I found it, you know, I didn't have a problem reading it, and the only thing I would say is I didn't particularly warm to Petra or Yanis, and so there wasn't really a character I was rooting for. You know, I like to have a character that I've really got behind, and I want them to succeed in whatever obstacles the author's thrown in their way. I didn't feel Petra was particularly likable. I thought she was a bit selfish, and you know, she wasn't unkind, but I didn't really root for her, and I didn't feel the same about Yanis either. You know, obviously we were all concerned about Nisha, but like you, I thought, well, she's at it, and the two child characters were, you know, quite cute, but they weren't in it enough to really sort of make me feel involved with them. And there was that, I think it was Mrs. Haji Kyriakou, the sort of old lady who was looking after. She was quite a nice character, but again, she wasn't developed, and there wasn't really. She was just as you say, a bit of a comic interlude, really. And so I just felt, you know, there isn't a character here who I'm really rooting for, apart from Nisha, who, you know, I wasn't confident she would reappear.
No, I mean, I didn't like Petra very much, and I think, I mean, there was a slight redemption, wasn't there, at the end? She became, but it wasn't like she turned into a nice. Just kind of like she realized maybe she was a little bit, but I do think Petra was hard to like from the very beginning, because you think, this person you live with for 10 years, you've paid them no attention, and you only really bothered they're not there because you've had to do a schoolroom, and you've got to look after your own after your own child. That was her starting point, which made it really difficult to like it at all, I thought, during through the book. And she was a very unemotional character, wasn't she? She was a very, you know, you could sort of see her as being a, I call a spade, you know, almost kind of, you know, and that's it. There was no emotion there. Yeah. I did like Yanis a little more, but I think it's only because he sort of, you know, you go, oh, you know, I can see how you get into these bad situations, you know, but he did sort of keep his general humanity, didn't he, through the through the book.
Obviously you perhaps worried that if he told Seraphim that he's not going to do the birds anymore, he was going to get something serious happened to him, and that was a bit weird, because when he did eventually tell Seraphim, he said, oh, well, you can have my car, or here's 10,000 euros or whatever, you know, and well, he got off quite lightly.
Yeah, I'll have some of that. I mean, Seraphim was interesting. Seraphim was probably more interesting as a character, I thought, and you know, I thought it was a strange character, wasn't it? Because he sort of dropped in, and there was kind of a hint of, you say, kind of you know,
dangerous guy,
a danger about him. But then when some danger could have really happened, it's like, yeah, take my car, or you know, 10,000 euros, or
not entirely convincing.
But there's potential there, and I quite like Tony.
Yes,
but we didn't see enough of him either.
He wasn't developed though, no. But I suppose essentially this book was about migrant workers and the awful life that they have to suffer, and you know, that really all the characters were sort of a background to that, weren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of a bit eye-opening, because I don't necessarily always think about places like Cyprus having
I didn't,
you know, and I guess that's my kind of blindness to the situation. I'll blithely walk around Cyprus and not notice it, but just kind of bring it home to think, goodness me, you know, these poor people coming over from, I don't know, the Philippines or just Sri Lanka or whatever it was.
Totally in hock for the rest of their lives, really, for the passage that they paid for.
Yeah, because they're obviously getting paid. But it sounds like, you know, huge percentages of their money was going for this journey over, and for what sounded like forevermore almost, you know.
Yeah.
And then they've got a couple €100, which they probably send back
straight home. Yeah.
They've got, I don't know, pennies for themselves to live on, and you think,
yeah,
you know, what an existence, you know.
So that was the message of the book, I guess, and we got that. So yeah, and of course, Nisha got pregnant, didn't she, by Yanis, and that I felt was a bit sort of disappointing, the way it, you know, she sort of lost the baby, and okay, so I've lost the baby, and there was no kind of, you know, I think Yanis was more disappointed about that than me. So I wasn't quite sure. I mean, obviously, if she hadn't lost the baby, then she got massive problems, and I suppose that's what it was illustrating, the fact that Petra would have fired her, she'd be pregnant, and possibly Yanis would have supported her, possibly he wouldn't. So again, that was the awful dilemma that these migrants have to deal with, isn't it? I think a lot of the book was kind of pointing up these things, and we shouldn't treat it as just a sort of whodunit. It's a lot more sort of political and serious than just a crime thriller, I suppose.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, there was, as you say, it's quite a dark book, really, when you actually, you know, didn't necessarily always feel dark. I think there was some dark points in it, but it didn't always necessarily feel it. But when you stand back and go, yeah, you know, there's murder, you know, there's ill treatment of foreign workers, you know, there's the kind of the Songbird drug, you know, kind of cartel gangs, whatever they are.
Yeah.
You know, there's the police were pretty shocking, you know, when people would go to the police and report, you know, like people repeatedly would go and report things, you know, and they'd go, oh, foreign workers don't care, you know. So that's quite.
That was obviously taken from the true story, wasn't it? Where this happened, yeah.
Really shocking, you know. So there were a lot of things in the book that made you think, oh goodness, you know, this is kind of really quite kind of gut-wrenching things, you know.
Yeah, I haven't read The Beekeeper of Aleppo, actually.
I'm glad you haven't either, because I haven't either.
I have it reserved on Borrow Box, but I won't get it till October. But it definitely made me want to read it. That'll be something to look forward to.
No, I say I enjoyed it, and although I think sort of, you know, I've probably said some, you know, talked in some ways about negative things about the book, I've really enjoyed the book. You know, I don't want, well, certainly from my point of view, I don't want people to think, oh, that Chris didn't enjoy this book. I actually really did. I really did actually enjoy it, you know, and it just could have been better, but I really, really, really enjoyed it. So, you know,
I certainly was. There wasn't, apart from the weird hair rotting away.
Yeah, get rid of that.
There wasn't anything where I thought, oh, I'm flagging. You know, I'm running. This story is running out of steam. So it definitely worked for me.
Yeah.
And, in terms of recommending it to a friend, I would certainly recommend it to a friend, and I'd probably give it a 4 myself.
I think I'd certainly recommend it to, you know, a friend. I wouldn't feel, you know, any kind of hesitance in that. And I think I'd say a 4 too. It's definitely way more than a 3. Didn't quite reach a 5, but I probably would never give any book a 5 because that's perfect. So I think 4 is a really strong 4 for me. Yeah,
me too. Okay, so I think that probably concludes our discussion for today. Do we need to say what next month's or this month's book is, or?
Well, the book we'll be reading for the rest of August is Annie Stanley, All at Sea by Sue Tedden, and that's it's just kind of a classic summer read. You know, you're sat by the pool, nice and easy, and it's just a real good page turner.
Sounds perfect. I've got it. I haven't started it yet, so I'll be getting onto that shortly. Yeah. Okay, so that's our very small book group for this month. We'll look forward to seeing you in September. Bye for now.
Bye.